Mr. Deutch, my Florida colleague, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to you and the ranking member. Thanks for holding today's hearing. And I understand that that you touched on this issue briefly, but I'd like to just pursue a little further the role that we play in Iran. And while I believe public broadcasting is vitally important around the world, it's especially true there. We've got few opportunities to speak directly to the people, to present accurate information about their government's choices and about American values. And our primary tool for reaching out to the Iranian people is Voice of America's Persian News Network. PNN's long been considered an ineffective diplomatic tool, however, plagued by poor programming, low-quality production, and mismanagement. It's tremendously unfortunate in a country where an estimated 90% of the populace gets their news from TV. The U.S., via the Persian News Network, is missing an opportunity to have an influential role in Iran by presenting, too often, by presenting unprofessional, low-quality newscasts, often with an incoherent message. Less than 2 weeks ago, as the Iranian people went to the polls in historic numbers, BBC Persian provided 24/7 coverage of the elections. Yet PNN instead chose to broadcast a music program and a show about historical maps instead of continuous election news. Unfortunately, none of these criticisms are new. As Iran remains a top foreign policy concern, I'm seriously concerned that we're missing a vital opportunity to reach an estimated 25 to 30 million people in Iran. So my question is this. Why is the production quality and editorial content of PNN so lacking? What barriers are there preventing the hiring and training of top journalists? And then I'll just also ask, in a hearing before the Middle East Subcommittee, Kareem Sajipur of the Carnegie Endowment suggested that PNN become a public-private partnership. This was alluded to earlier in the hearing. If you could elaborate about your thoughts on that and help us understand what can be done to make this a more effective diplomatic tool.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deutch. I agree with your assessment. I have not looked closely at PNN for about 6 months or so, but everything you every characterization that you just made, I would agree with. PNN's a real tough nut to crack. It wasn't put together well in the beginning. It was rushed. It went from about an hour and a half of programming to 6 hours over a year period. I can't think of any commercial station that could do that. I did a very thorough, I think a very thorough study of PNN when I joined the board in 2010 at the request of Senator Coburn. I'd be happy to share that with you. It addresses all of the questions you've just raised. But let me address one of the possible solutions for you. PNN is unlikely to be fixed because the issues are largely connected to personnel. It is unlikely to be fixed as long as it remains within the Voice of America. If you want a solution to PNN, take it out of the Voice of America like you did the Iraq broadcasting and when you created the Middle East Broadcast Network, and attach PNN to Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, where it will be with its sister station, FARDA. The entire legal regime that affects the management of personnel will change, and you will see, my guess is, something happen fairly quickly.
Well, I'd be happy to look at the report, but if you could just give me the upshot of the conclusion, and I understand the suggestion to do what you just described, but what is it when you say that it's mostly personnel? So what does that mean? What needs to happen for that to change? Who makes the decisions to put programming on about historic maps on an election day with very significant implications for the entire country and the world?
Those decisions are taken by the chief editor of the Persian News Network, and I don't know who that is these days. But I mean, the stories of this the stories like that are just legendary, and PNN doesn't seem to overcome them. I could tell you a bunch of them myself, but I won't waste your time with them. But presumably, a chief editor, a head of service, is making those decisions.
Do we have these problems do we have these problems anywhere else in the world to this extent?
I would say from my experience, I mean, look, these are media organizations, so every now and then there's going to be a slip up. And there is in almost every one of the services at one point or another. The big services, the most high-profile services are the ones that get the attention. And we all wring our hands and we say, my God, why are we doing this so badly? The reality is, in most cases, we do it really well. We're really good at this. But there are going to be slip-ups. I can't think, in my experience, of any component of U.S. international broadcasting that has been so consistently below the curve as PNN.
Mr. Deutch, I think your question reflects some of what I've been trying to say about mission and strategy. So imagine if the mission were clarified for the BBG, and forget about a restructuring, but even if there were restructuring, it would be even easier. But there's an election coming up in Iran. The National Security Advisor or the Secretary of State, or both of them, bring the CEO of the BBG into the White House, and they say, hey, this is really important. We would like you to direct these resources at this issue. That doesn't happen now, and in fact, it can't happen now in any way where the BBG actually has to take notice of that.
Well, why, if I can just ask, is the mission so unclear, is it so muddled that that it would be impossible for the editors, for the people who run the station, to know that on an election day, when the entire world is focusing on your country, that the news network might actually cover the news taking place in that country? And if so, how do we fix that? How do we clarify the mission? Who needs to do it? Who needs to be told? What has to happen so that they actually behave like a news network, so that the Iranian people can get clear, real news from this outlet?